Most Ironman triathletes blow up on the run in hot races, and it's not because they're unfit, but it's because they race like the temperature doesn't affect them, and it does. These 5 common mistakes ruin Ironman races in the heat, and I'm going to show you exactly how to avoid them. I'm Coach Rob Wilby from Team Oxygenaddict. Let's get to it. Right, now before we jump in, if you're preparing for your first Ironman, there's a link in the show notes for a free online training seminar. It's 30 minutes of your time that I guarantee will massively increase your chances of success on Ironman race day. I'd also love it if you'd subscribe to our channel. It really helps the growth of the channel, helps new viewers find us. Now, here are 5 mistakes that athletes commonly make and what you can do to fix them. Going out at normal power and pace. This is the number one mistake that athletes do. You have to accept that on race day, if it's significantly hotter than usual, you are going to have to race slower on both the bike and the run than you have been doing in training. It's just non-negotiable. You can certainly go out at the paces that you've trained at, but you are going to blow up and you're going to suffer in the heat. So the way to think of this is your core temperature is going to rise relentlessly, and the exercise that you're doing is going to produce heat. And when it's really hot, you can't shed that heat in the same way you can on a cool day. And so part of the demand of the event, if you like, is making your body move through space at a certain speed. But part of it is shedding the heat that your body creates as you create that movement. And on a really hot day, if you're not shedding that heat, you're going to get hotter and hotter and hotter, and eventually you're going to have to stop. As anyone knows who's tried to do a really hard workout indoors on the bike trainer without a fan going, the challenge of it isn't about the intensity, it's just about dealing with how hot you get. You absolutely don't want to have to feel like that on Ironman race day. I'm going to advise you shave a minimum of 5% and conservatively more like 10% off your power targets and your run paces. So if you were targeting 200 watts, you're going to need to knock between 10 and 20 watts off that. If you were trying to run 5-minute Ks, say, you're going to need to aim at 5:15 to 5:30 a K. So it isn't a massive change. And the key thing here is it's going to be individual for individual people. Some of you are going to handle the heat much better than others. Some of you, after your first hour of doing this, are going to get a really good feel for how things are going. And you know what? If you can pick up the power or pace, great. I would advise you not to pick up the power on the bike. I would advise you to be conservative there so that you can protect your run at all costs, and be conservative for the first hour of the run. And then you've got a really good feel, I think, 1 hour into the marathon, how the heat's affecting you. I would be surprised if there's anybody out there who isn't affected by a minimum of 15 seconds a kilometre against the paces that they've trained at in the cool. I would rather you back that off and you run 15 seconds or even 30 seconds a kilometre slower than you ideally wanted to, rather than you totally detonating at the halfway point and having to walk the entire back half of the marathon, or worse, not even finishing. And these are very real possibilities on really, really hot days. I think anyone who's raced a really hot Ironman in a hot country in a heat wave will know that the DNF number massively spikes. And the tragedy of it is, it's not because people aren't fit. It's because they either haven't acclimated for the heat well, or they haven't adjusted their pacing on race day to match how well acclimated to the heat they are. So I'm going to advocate this strategy. Start slower than you think. You can always pick the pace up in the second half of the run. And I guarantee that if you pace your Ironman well, you'll be passing loads and loads of people on the second half of the run. Okay, so mistake number 2 is ignoring opportunities for cooling, especially ignoring them early on in the race. There's obviously very limited opportunity to get yourself into the shade, especially when you're riding the bike. There's very limited cooling opportunities on the bike. So one thing I would advise you to do here is, when you go through an aid station and you've dealt with getting the bottles that you need to drink, get yourself an extra bottle of water, get some of that water over the back of your tri-suit, squirt it out all over the back of your tri-suit, squirt it over your thighs, and then the suit will get wet and then the evaporation will help cool you down. If you've got the opportunity to squirt it through the vents in your helmet as well, and this is hard with aero helmets, more so these days, some of them don't even have vents, then keeping your head cool can really help. It definitely helps with the perception of temperature if you can try and keep your head cool. You might find that if you've got an aero helmet on, you've got to put your head down and squirt the water up the back of the helmet to get your hair wet. It can be uncomfortable, and it's well worth practicing this in training because you don't want to try anything new for the first time on race day. But try as much as you can to stay as cool as you can. Try and stay as wet as you can on the bike. And when you get yourself onto the run, similarly, take every opportunity you've got to run in the shade if you possibly can. Think about the kit that you're going to wear ahead of time. You want a set of kit. Strangely, you don't want a running vest that you might think is cool. You want to keep the sun's rays off you with a sleeved tri-suit and keep that tri-suit wet so that the evaporation keeps you cool, just like you did on the bike. You might even have the option on the run. Some kind of hat is going to be essential to keep the direct solar radiation off your head, especially if you're going a bit thin on top, like a lot of our middle-aged men are. I'm certainly one of those. But one of the things can help here is if the hat's wet, it stays cool and that cools your head down. You might even be able to get ice at some of the aid stations and put ice inside the hat and have that there in order to cool you down. I've even heard of stories of people holding ice in the palm of their hand. One athlete even had, if you can believe this, a single rubber glove that he carried with him that he put on that hand and put ice into there and kept the palm of his hand really cool, because that's meant to be a place that really helps keep athletes cool. Now, whether that's an old wives' tale or whether it really, really helps, I don't know. But you could try that in training and see if even the perception is that it helps you. The chances are it's going to help you. Mistake number 3 is sticking to your usual hydration and nutrition plan. So let's break this into 2 parts. The hydration, I think, is the key part. If you've already been and done a sweat test or done a sweat test online, you know the milligrams of sodium you're going to need per litre. That's not going to change no matter how hot it is. What is going to change is how much fluid you need to replace if you're getting really hot and sweating a lot more. So it's not uncommon on really hot days for you to need double the volume of liquid that you'd intake on a normal day of training. So if you're normally drinking 500 mils an hour, you need to be thinking you're going to be somewhere in the range of 1,000 mils an hour. That's a good ballpark for you. Now, drink to thirst, but don't leave it to the point where you get really thirsty, because if you do that, the chances are you're already dehydrated. In an Ironman race, it's great. You're going to have the opportunity to pick up bottles every 20 or 30K on the bike, probably every 2K on the run. So there's plenty of hydration out there. You just need to make sure that you keep on top of your strategy. If you get the right balance of electrolytes in, I think that makes you safer from hyponatremia. If you're just drinking pure water and you drink an awful lot of it, can be at danger of hyponatremia in a really long race. That's something you absolutely want to avoid. So read up about that. I've not got time to talk you through it here now, but safe to say, you need to know the concentration of electrolytes that your body needs, and you need to make sure that everything you drink has got that in. Now, in terms of calories, you might well find that you can't take anywhere near the same number of calories on a really hot day as you can when it's a cool day. And the reason for that is, in hot races, the blood is shunted more to the skin. It's shunted away from the internal organs in the stomach to help you digest. It might be worth dialing down your calories by 10%, maybe even more than that in a really, really hot race. I'd certainly advise starting out with that, because it'll be much easier for you to add a little bit more in later on in the race than it will be to plow ahead with 110 grams of carbs an hour and find out that only 70 are getting digested and you feel really sick at the halfway point on the bike. So practice in training, get out on your long ride on a hot day in training and see how you feel with your normal calorie intake, and see what you can learn about your body and how it needs to adjust. Now, the 4th mistake I see people making is skipping the mental rehearsal aspect of heat discomfort. What I mean by that is, if you put yourself through a heat training protocol in training, you've got used to the sensation repeatedly, day after day, for probably between 14 and 20 days, of how unpleasant it feels being incredibly hot, and you learn to deal with that. If you haven't done any heat acclimation training, the shock of exercising in oven mode, if you like, it can be really, really hard. And that in itself is really difficult for athletes to deal with. So link back to how you felt in your hot bath or sauna sessions and practice calming yourself down mentally and knowing that you can deal with that level of heat and exercising in that level of heat. And our last tip here is Don't cram last minute heat work in at the end of your taper. You need to be doing this 14 to 21 days out is when you start, and end it 3 days before race day. So those 3 days you can then concentrate on staying cool and glycogen loading and resting and recovering so you're ready for a big effort on race day. Don't try and overload yourself with heat acclimation close to the race. It's going to make no difference that close, and it's just going to make race day really, really hard. So listen, I hope this video has helped you. In the comments below, I'd love to hear about the mistakes that you've made in the past, and it'll help other athletes in our community not make those mistakes. And if you're a first timer, let us know what your worries are and we'll try and help. And remember, please like and subscribe to our channel.